Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Erik, a teacher with LSAT Demon, and I am thrilled to have joining me today Raven, an LSAT Demon student who has been a mainstay and a star of our live classes for a while. There was a collective cheer from the LSAT Demon teaching team in our Slack when we learned about your recent success on the June LSAT. So congrats on your success, Raven, and welcome. It's awesome to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here and I'm ready to share my story. And I know we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but it just feels like it's a full circle. So I remember listening to the podcast and it really inspired me to take my LSAT tutoring, take my LSAT studies more seriously and making sure that I make the time, make it a habit. And it just feels so great to be here and to have my 170, and I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, now you can inspire the next round of students to follow in your footsteps. Awesome. All right. Well, take me back to the beginning. Where did you start with the LSAT?
So I bought my first LSAT book in 2019. So I bought a set of like 3 books. And then I also bought Introducing the LSAT, the Quick and Dirty LSAT Primer by Nathan. So my other book, so that I bought Collected Dust, but I remember picking this book up. And I'm like, it's like the little green book, and it was like inexpensive, and I think it's still on Amazon. But yeah, so I remember picking that book up, and so this was probably around 2021. And then there's a big gap in between because after that, I kind of stopped studying because life happened. And then I started to listen to the LSAT podcast. So like the LSAT Demon podcast with Ben and Nathan. And I would listen going to work every day. And I would listen like going home from work every day. And, something that they were stressing is like making that time. And how important it is to make that time and, study. So like, that's really what got me started. Technically my LSAT journey started in 2019, but I always say like my LSAT journey started in April of 2022, when I started studying with the Demon on LSATdemon.com, and I signed up for that LSAT Demon, and I signed up for like a live classes, and that's when my journey really began. And it took me even a month. So like my first diagnostic score was a 137. So on May 27th of 2022, I scored a 137, and it wasn't like the greatest feeling in the world because I think we all want to we're going to be awesome at this test. Like, maybe 150s, maybe I'm just going to score a 170 because I'm super smart. Which I am super smart, but which is why I have my 170. But I wasn't it just didn't come naturally to me to score like a 170, and it doesn't come natural to a lot of people. And I don't think I've actually ever heard of anybody scoring a 170 their first try ever on a diagnostic score. I don't think that happens. I think that, you get better, you learn, you take a lot of practice tests, and you get where you need to be as long as you're consistent and, you're taking care of yourself. I think self-care is super, 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 super important for this test. And I think that we have to take care of ourselves. We have to believe in ourselves. And it sounds cheesy. Like, it doesn't sound like it's a true thing, but throughout my journey, I did better when I was taking care of myself. And I, was going to the gym, and I was doing other things outside of the LSAT, because it does sound counterintuitive. Go to the gym, don't study for the LSAT, do this and do that. And you have to balance. This is a test that you have to balance, just as you're going to have to balance law school and to do well in law school. So like, you can't give up your social life or else it's not going to have good results. And for, if you want a happy, successful legal career, you have to learn how to balance. You have to learn how to self-care.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. It's really critical. Just throwing your head at the wall and trying to do this test for 8 hours a day, it's not going to work. You're going to burn yourself out. You have to leave some. You got to have a life outside of the LSAT, right? The other, but you mentioned that you had that the self-care obviously, but then the self-confidence to know that you could get better. You were smart. This test was masterable. You felt that even after your diagnostic, which I don't know that anyone's ever happy about their diagnostic score, but you felt that you could do better, right?
It was like, so I think that like on a certain extent, so like, I felt I hoped that I could do better. And I think that hoping turned into believing that I could do better. Because, like, if I'm being real and if I'm being honest, so, like, I didn't know. Like, so when, sometimes you get to a point where you don't know, but you still go for it anyways. You still, I was still, like, working hard and working hard. I'm like, okay, well, why am I'm at this plateau? I'm still scoring in the 150s. Why am I still scoring the 150s? But, like, you just keep on going for it. And I think that's super important. So sometimes you don't know, but because I think it's easy. It's easy for me to say, oh, like I knew, I believed in myself. No, I hoped and I worked hard. Thankfully, like, yeah, I got my 170. But you have to hope, you have to work hard. And I think, hope ends up turning into belief. Like you end up like believing in yourself. So like I hoped I could do, I believed that I started to believe that I could do it. And then I started doing it. But
plus you had a vision for the future, and you knew ultimately why you were putting in this work, right?
So I think knowing that why, because like I'm like one of those cheesy people. I knew at the end of 8th grade that I wanted to be an attorney. I want to be an attorney. I am going to be an attorney. So it's just like, okay, what am I going to do to get there? How am I going to get there? So just seeing that end goal and seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, I'm like, I'm going to have a phenomenal legal career, and I think coming from a background, so as a first generation college student and, coming from a background, so like my mother didn't graduate high school, like my grandmother didn't graduate high school. So like I am like the firstborn of all my siblings. So I'm like the first one to graduate from high school, and just like that was such a proud moment. And I think that knowing what I want my life to look like and working hard to get there. Yeah.
That's great. What is the dream for you with your work as an attorney? Like what kind of law do you want to practice?
I'm very open. I do, because I think that's an important thing, to be open for the opportunities that come. Because I originally, like in 8th grade, like I wanted to do criminal law. I wanted to be a defense attorney, but I grew up a little bit, and grew up a lot. I found there are other types of law, and I would say to anybody listening to this that wants to be an attorney, look into other types of law. There are so many things and so many different facets that you could take in the legal realm. So, and you can connect that to whatever you're doing. So like I'm a farmer, I'm a Black female farmer. And that's something that I take pride in. And I think, I can be a Black legal farmer and Black female legal farmer, and like incorporate that into the legal realm. And it sounds like goofy and it sounds funny, but like there's literally like a lawyer for everything. There's lawyers in agriculture, and I remember doing the test too, and there's like a lot of farming related questions and like different like gardening related questions, and like I was like doing this one question, and I think it was about organic. It was like an LR question. It was like about like pesticides, and like, okay, like what if we do this with pesticides, like what's going to happen? And like, I'm like, this is very relevant stuff. And I think the LSAT may be structured that way. Like it includes like a variety of different topics, but there's a variety of different types of lawyers, and like it's all relevant. And I think it depends on like you though.
Absolutely.
It could be not super relevant to you, but it's as relevant as you want it to be to you. And I think that's another thing that helped me doing this test is you want to make it relatable to you, and you want to make it personal to you. And that's going to help you do well.
Yeah. Important to note that you have your own unique strengths and experiences that are going to help you on this test. And no, it's not a test of knowledge, but you don't shut out your whole reservoir of knowledge, right? That that all serves you. It's part of who you are, and it's going to make you better at this test. I'm sure, though, there are still moments for everybody, whether it's a RC passage or some vocabulary that comes up, stuff that is unfamiliar and feels like something that's way out of your wheelhouse. This test does challenge you. So in those challenging moments, or maybe you're running into something that doesn't feel like it's a part of your knowledge or your experience, how do you get through that? How do you overcome those moments of feeling like, oh, I'm out of my element here?
So I think fake it until you make it. Take your time. So like digest, chew on the words, digest them and look at the semantics, look at the meaning. I think that especially moving forward, I mean, obviously, like, I think the whole test, like logic games or no logic games, like the test is a test of reading comprehension. You need to understand what you have read to be able to succeed on this test. So you gotta slow down sometimes. You have to slow down. Slow down. And I think that'll make the difference because so slow down the speed up. And I think that having that philosophy in your studies is going to take you so much farther.
Would you say that was the biggest lesson or the biggest challenge for you with the LSAT, was learning to slow down and trusting that slowing down would pay off?
I think that was, and then I think making predictions as well was like a huge challenge. So like doing those two things, they're going to bring like so much points. They just take a lot of time to practice and to master. And honestly, Eric, I think I've done almost every like LSAT there is. Because like I've been studying since like 2022. So like I've done like everything. So, but like, I think there's a difference though between, 2022 me and like that approach and what I was able to get from it versus, 2024 me. Because I think like if I would read some of the patches that I have read recently and read well, and like 2 years from now, I will remember. So like, I think like the aim is you want to read a passage so well that you're going to remember it 2 years from now. And you're going to remember like that main idea and you're going to remember what they said. Like it might, you have to read like a sentence, but like you want to remember that. So like, if you can't remember that 2 years from now, you didn't do a good job reading that passage.
Besides just slowing down, how do you do that? How, like, obviously, yes, slowing down and focusing on understanding, biggest lesson. But when you think about Raven from 2022 versus Raven from 2024, what are you doing differently when you read that ensures that, hey, maybe you're graduating from law school and you can still remember that RC passage?
I'm stopping. So like, I'm going to stop between commas and I'm going to think about, and kind of connect it to me too. Okay, well, this is saying this, and I'll say it in a different way, like, coming from my mouth, like a Raven way. Yeah. So, and I think too, like something that 2022 me didn't do very well, like I didn't really understand the meaning. So like, and I think I've said semantics. So like, what does this word mean? And that's why on RC, like, so like they'll have like a word and they'll be like, okay, well, what does this mean? The question, and they'll have like 4 different ways. And like all these, like for one specific word, it could mean 4 different things, and it could have 4 different definitions. But like thinking about like what a word means and how is this word being used is something that I didn't do. And I think that, especially for RC, and I think that we don't know our score, but I think for this June test, and RC was my struggle section, like a lot of other people's struggle section is RC. I think I rocked that RC test, like that RC section. I came out confident. Like, I'm like, I know I did very, very well in that RC section. But I think you gotta okay, so what's the author want? Like, what does the author want? What's the author's like point? Like, why is he writing this to you? And I think that looking at that from that perspective is going to be very powerful. And it's going to help you greatly. And then another thing that like I didn't make predictions. I didn't make predictions in RC. I didn't make predictions in LR. Also, you can make, let me backtrack really quick because you can make predictions in RC. I recommend you make predictions in RC. It's going to, I predict that you would do a lot better if you make predictions in RC. What does the right answer choice have to do? And I think phrasing it like that. So what does the right answer choice have to do? Like what, and that's going to kind of help too on making those predictions, because sometimes it's hard to make like a direct prediction, but like you can think about it in terms of, okay, so what, because like that was something that 2022 me struggled. And I think I got to a point, I plateaued for like a while. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me listen to like the Demon team. Let me start making predictions. Because I'm stubborn. I'm not sure why. Let me just listen to the Demon team and let me start making these predictions. And I saw a difference.
Totally. And I do think that predicting on reading comp is something that can feel intimidating, and it can feel like the questions on RC are a lot more open-ended than they actually are, which makes it maybe intimidating to try to predict. But it's a lot simpler than you might think. It really comes down to, did you get the main point, like you have talked about? Or can you just remember what the author said about this one thing, right? Like the author said a thing about this thing in the question. Can you just take 5 seconds to remember what that was and trust that if you've done the work of reading the passage carefully, you've got it. You'll remember it.
And then I think too, like, so because I would never, so when I was doing LR versus like when I was on the struggle bus with like RC, something that I did must be true as well. And like I was always confident in my must be true LR questions, but you can have that same confidence with the must be true because like, for RC, because like they're all must be true questions, and thinking about it in that sense was really helpful as well because it just must be true. I think so looking at like, so I think the adverbs, I think that's the right word. So like, okay, so when the author says like, shyly or like anything with an ly and uses those descriptive words, like picking that up. I also like when the author, so like sometimes you can pick up to like the author has an attitude. So like that was fun. Mm-hmm. So like, oh, like the author's like, he's like just crapping on somebody. Like he's like, this is bad. They don't do this right. They don't do this right. They suck. They're crappy because of this. And I think like that made like RC really fun. And like just thinking about it in that way too. Again, another thing that has been said, like, so I think that's Chris actually had some classes. So they were like real housewives of RC because like RC is dramatic. So yeah.
There's a ton of drama in those. And yeah, hopefully you can pick out the points where it might seem like it's all polite academic language. They're writing like they're writing an academic paper, but you're totally right. If you're reading closely, you can see, oh wow, he is really crapping on these other scientists on what they said. It can be pretty funny. If you don't mind, I'd like to get a little bit more about your maybe study schedule. You mentioned that you were really good with, or that you had a focus on self-care, that you weren't going to burn yourself out and make the LSAT the entirety of your day. You have another life, but you must have been consistent with your studies. I know I saw you in classes and you were, I would say like my memory of you in live classes was that you were participated, you were in the chat, you were asking questions, you had your camera on. I'm sure all that helped you. Aside from your live classes, maybe run me through what like a typical week of your LSAT study might look like. Just because we get a lot of students who don't even know, how do I do this? How do I study? So what did that look like for you?
So I do want to make sure, because like I had to take gaps too. I had to take like gaps in between and breaks in between just because like life got out of hand. And I think that, okay, so different things I recommend powering through, but like don't be afraid to take a gap in your studies. So I kind of like, I was in a state of homelessness briefly too, like in between my studies. So like I had to take that gap. And like that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I have a 170 now. Like I have a house, so no worries. But I think that's something that you can't be afraid to do is take a gap when you need to take a gap. And that's something that I wanted to make sure that I stress on here, because like life happens. It's okay. Like the LSAT's gonna be here. You're gonna come back and the LSAT's gonna be here. And like honestly, I think that like so I'll be entering law school like as an older applicant, but I think that I'm so much better off entering law school now versus like in 2020 when I was fresh out of college, and I'm happy to be entering law school now, and I think that's going to make me a better applicant and like better competition, so watch out.
I did not know that about your story, Raven, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, the life that you've lived and your experience, I think it's so real, and it's going to be such a positive thing when you are eventually advocating for your clients, whoever they might be. I mean, they're just going to be lucky to have someone who has lived the life that you have. And yeah, I don't know. I just applaud you for all that you've done and for achieving and for just being real about, hey, at certain times in your life, for whatever reason, it's not the right time to study. And that's totally fine. Law school will always be there. The LSAT will always be there.
Yeah, and it's better. Like I'm happy that I waited, but I think like it's important to take care of yourself, because you truly can't you're not going to do well on this test if you're not taking care of yourself. So like eating healthy, exercising, just having like a life like outside the LSAT, outside of like work. So something, and I like a lot of other people that have came on this show. So I work a full-time job and I'm a farmer. So like I had two different things on my plate, and then I was studying for the LSAT. So just juggling like three things, because like they were all super important to me, because need to work to live, need to have a job to like eat, and then farming is my passion. So I actually this weekend I was able to plant 1,500 transplants out on the farm. And
wow.
And because I wasn't studying for the LSAT. But even while studying for the LSAT, it might have just been like 600 transplants in a weekend. But even studying for the LSAT, so like I started all my transplants from seed and doing that, and I had to sacrifice a lot, but like I didn't have to sacrifice everything. And I think that having a supporting team, so like my fiance, and I had to Jeremiah, very supporting, and then I even like LSAT Demon students, so like working with Fatima, Dom, Josh, Braden, super support, because like you need like a supporting team, and that's something that I want to stress. But my schedule, so I would wake up, because like something that I needed to do, so I needed to do LSAT first thing. It's a working a full-time job, like it, because like I would, if I didn't do it first thing, it wasn't going to get done in the way that I would want it to get done, in a way that would be the most beneficial. So doing it first thing in the morning, and taking that time, waking up early, and I drive like an hour 45, an hour, sometimes 45 minutes to work too. So like,
wow.
I had to wake up early, so I was waking up sometimes at like 4:30, just making sure that I got my LSAT in, and got done what I needed to get done. I think that making it a habit, so I always think of, so it takes 30 days to make a habit. And that's something that I took and like, okay, so I just making it a habit, making it habitual. So it feels weird to me now because I'm not studying for the LSAT. It felt weird losing my streak because like I think it was like around 500 days, maybe over. But like, so make it a habit. So it takes 30 days to make a habit. So like if you study for a month, wake up every morning for like a month, you're good. Like it's going to become natural. It's going to become easier.
So was finding a specific time of day for you in the morning and just saying, this is my time to do it, was that the key to making it a habit?
Yeah, that was the key to making a habit, and then making it a priority too. So like, because you're gonna be tired. I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. I don't want to wake up, but I'm going to because I won't get my 170 LSAT score. What helped me too, because like I sacrificing a lot, sacrificing time, sacrificing just different things. So I'm like, I threw in a lot of sacrifices into like the LSAT fire. I need to make sure that those are worth it and make those sacrifices worth it and like put in the work. And nobody's going to do it for me. I have to put in the work. And that's something that I have to stress. You have to make time. You make it a priority. So like you make a priority for things that are important to you. The LSAT was important to you. So I made it important to me. So I made it a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned your support group. I think it's critical to have people who are in your corner when you are making these sorts of sacrifices and when you're waking up at 4 a.m. to do this sort of stuff. You mentioned your fiance. Awesome that you had supportive partner there. You also mentioned some other LSAT Demon students. So is this a study group that you were a part of?
I had help from everybody. So and they were all at different kind of stages too. Of my LSAT journey. So I remember studying with Dom and studying with Fatima in a group. And actually, so I remember studying with them. And like, that's when I started to score. That's when I scored like my first like 170. And that's when like I started to do really, really well because I was studying with them and I was getting their feedback and they were getting my feedback. And like, they helped me so much. And then studying with Braden, like consistently, that helped me so much. And then like ending kind of my study journey with like Josh, like super helpful. And like, it's super cool because like, we're all going to be on this journey together, even though like we're each other's competition. But like being on this journey together and like, looking over each other's personal statements and like, oh, like, hey, and it's just so nice to have like people that are going, through the same journey as you and like being there to support one another. And I think that's super important. Finding that specifically and, having like because like my fiance, he's awesome. He was my boyfriend before the LSAT journey. Well, during the LSAT journey, and then he became my fiance because, I guess I'm just super smart again. So that support network. So, but finding people that are doing the same thing everybody's in different parts of the United States too, which is really cool. We all have like different backgrounds and different perspectives and different feedbacks. And like, it's just really cool. And like, I feel blessed just having like such an awesome group and having that experience and going through this experience with like some really amazing people. And that's because of LSAT Demon.
Your family must be excited too, huh?
Yeah, I don't think they know because like it's weird because I said 170. I don't think they know. Like I think like I have to like show up for Thanksgiving, which I'm super excited about to show up for Thanksgiving with all like my law school acceptances. So braggadocious is just going to be my theme of Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for being able to brag about my LSAT.
All right.
Well, and about like my law school acceptances, because like I was like talking to my mom, like, Mom, I know you don't know what this means, but it means I did like better than like 96% of other test scores. She's like, okay, awesome, that's great, but I don't think she knows like how important and just how like awesome that is.
Yeah, you'll be able to show up with some acceptances and saying, hey, this is for free, by the way. All right. So speaking of which, fall is coming around. So you'll be applying this fall. Are you just going to cast a really broad net or any schools that you're looking at in particular?
See, I'm going to cast a broad net and just see where it lands. That's my plan. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear. Stay in touch. Let us know how it goes. Maybe, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you wanted to talk about? Any question that I should ask?
Well, I think we talked about a lot of things. We talked about like the teamwork. So, like, just emphasizing the teamwork. We talked a little bit about my journey and just like, we talked about self-care. We talked about like, Black female farmer. And I think that's important.
Does that come from your family, by the way, the farming?
So my fiance, he's a farmer. So, but I loved like planting stuff.
Yeah. What do you love about it?
I always liked planting like a really big garden. Like I like vegetables. So like, but he actually was able to like plow out. Maybe this is why he's my fiance. But he plowed out like a field for me just to plant, and it was like the biggest field that I could had. I think it was like around maybe like a half an acre, and it expanded. And he like, I think like my garden's right now, it's over 3 acres. But like I had went to the nursery, buy from your local nursery. But I went to like the nursery and I bought like 100 tomato plants, and I was just super excited about these plants. And it honestly, I love to garden. Like I love planting stuff. I love watching things grow. And I think that I wasn't always successful at it either. It was kind of like my LSAT journey. So like watching things grow, I killed a lot of plants. So like I missed a lot of questions. So like first, like in starting seeds, so like you have to do it a very specific way, and like different things need to be right for you to get a really nice, healthy plant. So you have to water them. You have to put in the work. They have to have a certain amount of light. You have to take them out so they, don't die under that light. And just different things, like different conditions, and you're going to have a successful plant. And it's so much like the LSAT journey, because like certain things need to happen for you to be successful for the LSAT. And, not giving up when you miss the question, not giving up, when your seedlings die and they shrivel up, and like just powering through. And like, okay, changing this, because like you can't consistently make the same mistake. That's not what I'm saying. You don't consistently make the same mistake, cross your fingers and hope for the best. That's not what I'm recommending. But like you need to adjust. So, okay, well, what can I adjust to for this? And then like, so it's just finding those right conditions for your plant to thrive and for your LSAT journey to thrive.
Well, Raven, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been great to chat about the LSAT with you, and you are lamenting the loss of the LSAT from your routine, but I have good news for you. If you become an LSAT teacher, it can just stay a part of your life. I have found that out, and it continues to be a joy. So just something to consider if that sounds interesting to you. Otherwise, any last words of wisdom or piece of advice that you would give to students who are on the grind right now?
So can we pause really quick? Because I do have a quote that I think is like worth mentioning.
Yeah, of course.
And I sent this out to like two of my study buddies, and I just think that it's an Elwood quote, but it's a very underrated Elwood quote. Okay, it's a very underrated Legally Blonde quote.
All right, we had a deep cut.
Okay. So this is the quote. So this is from Legally Blonde. So Professor Stromwell, the law is reason free from passion. Does anyone know who spoke those immortal words? David. Aristotle. Professor Stromwell. Are you sure, David? Yes. Professor Stromwell. Would you be willing to stake your life on it? David. I think so. Professor Stromwell. What about his life? David. I don't know. Professor Stromwell. Well, I recommend knowing before speaking. The law leaves much room for interpretation, but very little for self-doubt. And you were right. It was Aristotle. So I think you got to believe in yourself. It's corny. But like you have to believe in yourself.
Love that. Raven, thank you so much for joining and sharing your LSAT story. Looking forward to hearing about everything that the future holds for you. Please stay in touch. Thanks once again for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raven. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.